welcome to another job mentorship session. The second one to be precise for this particular cohort. Karibuni sana. So I'll go ahead and introduce the topic as the rest of us join. So we're going to be discussing data protection, and I'm sure the word data protection, as long as you've been in the IT field, you've come across it some way or another. So it's not really a new term per se, but then the whole point of cybersecurity is protecting data. You're either protecting data that is stored. Kindly mute your mic. Whose mic is on? Then Tamari's. Okay. So where was I? So I was saying the whole point of being in cybersecurity, or primarily the work of any cybersecurity professional, is either you're protecting data that is stored or data that is in motion, or you're protecting data that is being used. So data protection basically forms the basic of your career in cybersecurity and the basics of anyone who is trying or wants to venture into this path. So today we have with us a mentor who will go through data protection as a whole, and she'll delve into exactly what it entails in the industry. So without taking much more time, I'll go ahead and welcome Gloria Nyaboke, who is an ICT risk security officer at Kingdom Bank Limited. She will go ahead and tell us more about herself and hopefully what being an information security officer entails in a bank, and also delve into data protection. So welcome, Gloria.
Thank you, Hope. I hope everyone can hear me. Am I
Yes, we
audible?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Hope. I hope I don't need to put on my video. So as Hope I said, my name is Gloria Nyamosi. Currently, I serve as the ICT risk officer at Kingdom Bank. So this is cohort what? Hope? Maybe I'd
This
want
is
to know.
cohort. This is cohort 2, 2024. I can't count from the
Wow.
beginning, but so far it's
Thank you.
cohort 2 of this year.
Okay. Congratulations, cohort 2 of 2024. So for me, I'm a pioneer from cohort 1, first ever of 2022. So we were the pioneers of this particular program. So we are here to say that Cyber Shuja works, and it's not a joke. So we can cheer up Cyber Shuja for that. I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I had. I don't want to delve so much into who I am, what I do, and all this. And what I can really say is maybe try and give an overview or a profile of what I do at Kingdom Bank. So basically, an infosec, or from an ICT risk point of view, you're providing insight and ensuring that controls are in place. Yeah. So we want to ensure that if you guys have a particular policy, it's being followed the way it should, and then you're able to analyze and advise the bank or the users or the board or management on any gaps and risks or any exposures. I remember I've ever done a session before on risk management and business continuity, and that was highly linked to my role. And data protection comes in on the risk point of view. It comes in from an exposure risk, because when we speak about cyber attacks, any threat actor who wants to infringe your system, they're not there to just scam you. They're there to steal data, okay? And whether it's financial, whether it's sensitive data, at the core of every business is data. everyone is picking data. If you want insights, if the business wants to make a particular decision, they need to go to their data and then make sense of their data and be able to make a decision. So what cybersecurity does is safeguard that data. So now there's an issue of data privacy that comes in. That's when now data protection will come in, and we have regulations around that. So if you'll allow me, I'll just share my screen and just for us to dive into this particular topic. And if you have any questions, I'm sure there is a Q&A and there's a chat where you guys can put that up. So let me just share my screen. Okay. I hope my screen is visible. Command
Yes, it is.
confirm.
You
And it's
can
on
just
full
switch. You
full
can switch to
screen.
presenter mode.
Sorry.
I don't know if it's on my side, but you're not on presenter mode, so it's not on full screen.
Okay. It's now on full.
Yes, yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So we're talking about data protection and data privacy. So that's my simple profile. I'm the ICT and InfoSec officer at Kingdom Bank. I've trained as an InfoSec analyst. I'm an ISO lead implementer. I've also done trainings on data protection. On my LinkedIn, Gloria Nyaboke, that's my profile. On X, I should have changed that to X, not here anymore. And for membership, I'm a member of ISACA and an associate member of ACFE, that is a body for fraud examination and all that. So this slide is intentionally left blank. I have left it to the audience to tell me what their objectives are for this particular session. And then at the end of it, we'll be able to see if we have met those objectives. So I'll pose it to the audience to just share some of the objectives or what they are looking forward to from this particular session. So we can take like, I think 3 minutes of this time.
So you can just raise your hand and then I'll help clearing
Yeah.
selecting. Yeah. No objectives to the session.
Hey,
You're all
people don't
blank
have
book.
objectives.
Yes, Dennis.
I have given you the rate down. Huh?
Yes, yes, Dennis, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good
Hey,
evening.
good evening.
My name is Dennis Sanjigo. According to the objectives that you for what you do in the banking bank, I'd say that from my POV is that I think the session is going to tell us how I, as an information security analyst, I'm going to protect our data, the organization data from access by the malicious people. That's from my POV.
Okay, how to protect the organization's data. Any other?
Abigail,
Um, we'd love to understand of the risks of the careers we choose. Like for her as an analyst, like what are the risks she's going to, or what are the challenges?
Okay, the risk and challenges.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Daniel, you can cover.
Hi. So I think my question would be, in terms of your role as a data protection officer or analyst, what would be the life cycle of the data protection process? And maybe another sort of question would be, from within your role, would you give us sort of a lay of the land in terms of the function of your role in the broader organization, and maybe something on remuneration, like help us just scope, like what does it look in terms of, because we're all also looking for work in the future, like just give us a lay of the land of how what it looks like, the remuneration, how you guys value your work, and or how do you, and so on and so forth. I think hope you got the
Okay.
gist of the question. Yeah, yeah, role and remuneration. Yeah, role, remuneration, JD. Yeah, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Dennis?
Hi, Gloria. Hi, Maurice. Thank you so much for this. Mine is to ask, um, in the interest of the business and also in the interest of regulation, how do you navigate between the two, ensuring that the business ends up benefiting the client end while still protecting the user or the business clients themselves?
Okay.
Thank you.
So I hope that gives it like I hope I have finding a balance. So the business needs innovation, comes in regulation. Now we are coming in also with cyber or infosec, and you want to understand how to ensure that balance. Eh?
Yes,
Oh,
and also
okay.
maybe how to pitch from the
Mm-hmm.
standpoint on standing of regulation, so that
Mm-hmm.
maybe the business owner can appreciate why to embrace data governance while still
Okay.
ensuring that they manage to be productive.
Okay. So,
Thank you so much.
so thank you. These are really good objectives. Um, I will cover some of them. Will cover them during the for the training, and some of them I'll take them as out of the box so that I can be able to address those particular concerns. So I think we'll continue the training, and the question is then what is data protection and what is data privacy? So data protection, on just a nutshell, is the process of protecting data. It means it's a means by which privacy rights of individuals are safeguarded in relation to collecting and processing of personal data. So we have people who collect and process personal data. We have companies, we have governments and institutions that do this. And then remember we the people, an individual, within our constitution, you have a right to privacy. So then how do we ensure that when we're processing this data or collecting this data, this personal data, we're able to ensure this privacy, we maintain the privacy of the rights of that individual's data. So we ensure that we protect that data. And data privacy is just an aspect or an area within data protection that now ensures is the proper handling of sensitive data. So we'll a little bit. I'll give you insights on what are these sensitive data, what is personal data, and all this. So it will cover anything to do confidential data, financial data, IP, and at the nutshell of it, we want to ensure that we meet regulatory requirements, but also ensuring that we protect the confidentiality and immutability of that data. So then we need to understand one thing. Privacy is not security. When you talk about data privacy, it's not necessarily security. Data security comes into just ensure we have protected that data, but it is not like one and the same thing. So data security protects data from compromise by external attacks and malicious insiders. So in the event of a cyber attack, that is a data breach and it has compromised data privacy. Okay. So data security is now putting in place maybe tools, security controls, all this to ensure that this data is not breached by external attacks or from malicious insiders or any malicious attackers. But then privacy governs how you collect, you share, you store, and use particular data. So privacy will look at the collection of personal information. It will look at how you use and disclose that data. Where do you store that data? How is it accessed? What is the quality of that data? And how did you collect that data? And then security will come in to protect. When we talk about the CIA triad, this is now where security comes in. So we're putting in measures to ensure that data that has been stored is safe from unauthorized use, that is on confidentiality. On integrity, it ensures it is reliable and maintaining the accurateness and correctness of data. And then availability, the people are authorized to access this data or use this data, they are able to when they need to. When you talk about security, uh, data may not necessarily fall under personal identifiable data. So you could have data that belongs to a business, but remember a business is not an individual's data, is not individual data. So they will just overlap to ensure that security comes in to protect a small aspect of privacy where you ensure now you protect that personal data. So when you're talking about data privacy, we're only talking about personal and sensitive data. Okay, so this personal data is information that relates or can be identified to, can be identifiable to a natural person. And in this case, we are calling them a data subject. So when you talk data protection, you have to just focus yourself on a person, a natural person, who in this case, we are going to refer to as a data subject. So a data subject is an individual who can be identified directly or indirectly via an identifier. That can be either their name, their ID place, or other factors, either their physical appearance, their physical location, their biometrics, their genetic or cultural identity. So when you talk of when we dive into data protection, you'll get to also get words like who's a data controller and a data processor. So a data controller is a natural or legal person, and by legal persons I mean a company, a registered company is a legal person. So it could either be a natural one person, mtu moja ana control, or a legal person, a company, could be a public authority, an agency, or any other body, which along or jointly with others determines the purpose and means for processing personal data. Whereas a data processor is either a natural or legal person, public authority, agency, which processes personal data on behalf of a data controller. So a data controller is the one who gives the rules, gives the purpose and means for processing personal data. But then a data processor will process personal data on behalf of a data controller. When you talk about personal data, which we have said is information that can be identified or identifiable to a natural person, we have also another aspect of sensitive personal data. Data that can reveal a person's race, health status, ethnic, social origin, your beliefs, your marital status, your family details. Now that gets down to a subset of personal data that we call sensitive data. So your health records, that's under sensitive data. And then we have what we call queers personal data. Queers personal data is data that, if used alone, cannot be used to identify someone. For example, if my ethnic background is let me use Nigerian ethnic background. I don't know why I don't know of Nigerians. Anyway, let me use like South African. If I am a Swazi and someone says that lady who's a Swazi, that alone cannot be used to identify me as the natural person. So acquires data has to be used together with another. Like with another, you have to combine, okay, for you to make sense of it. For example, I'm a Swazi, and then I work at let's say ABC Banker. So is there ABC? Okay, let me say ABC Limited. So if you say that white lady, that Swansea white looking lady who works at ABC, that now can be used to identify that particular person. So we have sensitive personal data, we have also quasi personal data. So when you talk about personal identifiable information, would request someone to mute. When you talk about PII, this is personal data. These are just some of the categories, and we've already mentioned them. Let's say some of the categories could be race, ethnic, religious, trade union information, genetic, or even biodata. When you talk about now your biography as a person, your marital status, your date of birth, your NSSF and HIF numbers and all these. When you talk about data on appearance, your skin color, your eye color, your height, your weight. When you talk about data on your education, you can talk about data on private life, for example, your social handles, your photos you put there, your phone calls, and all this, your IPs, your cookies, and then data on health and all this. So these are just some of the of the classes or categories of PII data that we're talking about. There's also a different level of how you handle PII data. There's from the most sensitive to the less sensitive. And this is subject to an institution or an organization. Okay, so this one is just a general. So in any particular institution, for example, if you see, I have used my work laptop to generate these slides. Opportunity is classified as public by Kingdom Bank. So that is a classification, okay? And that defines how you handle some particular uh, data or information or documents. So the same way for PII, there's how you handle more sensitive and less sensitive. Now, this is just an overview of how you can generate how to handle PII data. When you talk about data protection, there are regulations around it. Okay, we have the GDPR under the European Union that was passed in 2018. And then we have, within Kenya, we have the Data Protection Act for 2019. So this now is a regulatory or something that governs data protection globally and within our own jurisdiction. Sorry. When you look at to also get maybe to understand what is the global status on data protection regulation, because there are some countries that have not been regulated on data protection. This photo is, because I know the latest statistics were in 2023 last year, I think so, but this could be, I want to assume that it could be an updated, and luckily it's not showing the red areas that have not been so and still pass. And I was excited for the fact that it has the DPA on it and Poppy, which I like for South Africa. So from the latest statistics that I put on the left side of my slide, data protection in Africa, we have 61% of African countries already have data protection laws in place. That includes Uganda and Tanzania, our neighbors. And then we have 11% that are in the process of drafting. We have 18% that lack any legislation on data protection. These statistics these are the latest actually statistics that have been formally published, but we can always put them to subject and confirm. And as we operate within Kenya, we also need to understand the laws within Uganda and Tanzania. For example, in Kenya, it is mandatory to register as a data controller and a data processor. But when you look at the laws in Uganda and Tanzania, it's actually not mandatory. So we also need to understand, and especially if you're looking for jobs, even outside of Kenya, and we're seeking to get jobs within Uganda and Tanzania, it's always good to understand the regulations around that. When you look at the Data Protection Act in Kenya, I have tried to summarize it in a very small in this slide. I know this slide is very busy. And when you look at it, we say that the DPA was came into force on 11th of November 2019. It came to protect innovation and protecting data of individuals. It came as a result of the Huduma number registration. There was a concern because a lot of personal and sensitive data was actually collected. And then we have the Office of the Data Commissioner. It was established under the Act. It is now headed by a data commissioner who's called Immaculate Kasait. So just to give an overview of understanding the DPA landscape. So when you read out that act, it has 9 parts. So the first part will just give you definitions, object and purpose of why they have put it in place. Number 2, it gives force or gives mandate for the establishment of the data of the data commissioner's office. So the data commissioner's office has a mandate, and you can check out their website. They have put out resources, they have put everything that they do. And then part 3 of it talks about the registration of data controllers and processors. It defines what organizations need to do. And then part 4 gives the principles and obligations of personal data protection. This now is like the guiding or the or the Kamwa Kenya of how you need to do what you need to do. These principles and the rights of data subjects are what will govern most of the things that organizations will do. Then part 5 gives grounds for processing sensitive data. Then part 6, the transfer of personal data outside of Kenya. As we all know, there's a restriction to transfer personal data outside of Kenya or even to store data outside of Kenya. I know some of us have done the cloud computing course, are going to get into cloud. We need to understand that if we are going to store our customers' data on a cloud platform, which sits somewhere in the UK or in the US, then there are proper guidelines that have been given for you to be able to get consent to actually store or transfer personal data outside of Kenya. So we need to ensure that we adhere to these particular regulations. Then also there's exemptions on regulation. For example, if it is a matter of national security, if it's a matter of national security, we'll not need to seek the consent of a data subject to share that particular information. So there are exemptions to processing or even disclosing personal data. Then on 8, we have the enforcement provisions, which now will tell you what are the administrative and what could you do wrong and what is the implication, yeah? What are the remedial actions that the ODPC can take? And then number 9, we have provisions on delegated powers. We have a cabinet secretary who's been delegated to run this particular agenda. So we'll just talk about the data processing principles for you to understand. There are 7 in number. So we have lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. The law states that you only collect and process data on lawful purpose, and it has to be fair and transparent. And you need to seek consent. You need to get the consent of the data subject before you can collect and process their data. This purpose limitation. That means you only process personal data for the purpose for which it was intended. Then storage limitation, you only need to store it for as long as you need it. Then there's accuracy. Accuracy is ensuring that it's accurate every time. For example, if someone changes their phone number, it needs to be accurate. Also, the data subject is informed that they have, because they have a right to come and rectify or update their information. So they also need to put in place measures. And I know most of this will come in, and the government will come and ask you, what effort did you make to actually ensure you've maintained accurate data? Then there's accountability. The data processor is accountable, is responsible for complying with the ODP, with the regulation. Remember, you have, as the data processor, you are the one who has been given the data to process. And remember, as the data controller, you're the one who maintains purpose. So as the data processor, you need to be accountable to the data controller who's given you the data that you're processing. Then data minimization is only ensuring you collect data that you need. For example, why do you need to collect details of next of kin, and you're not going to use it for whatever you're collecting that data for? For example, if you're just telling people to apply for jobs, then you're requesting for their next of kin details. At that point of an application for a job, details of the next of kin are not relevant. So you only are required to gather and keep an exact amount of data. Then ensuring confidentiality. That means you need to safeguard, you need to put in place measures to ensure that the data that you have installed and the data that you're processing is actually safe from cyber attacks and all this. So when it comes to the rights of the data subjects, I'll just speak briefly. So they have a right to be forgotten. So if they come and tell you, I need you to erase my data, you erase it. There's a right to correction or updation of the information. There's a right to restrict processing. If they tell you, I no longer want you to continue maybe sending me this particular promotional message, then they have that right to for you to restrict that. Then they have a right to access their data. They have a right to portability. If they request you to share their data to a third party, then you're obligated to do that. Then they have a right to the transparency, fairness, and lawfulness of data. As a data subject, they can also request their data to be processed anonymously. So these are some of the reasons as to why they can ask for that. So then I'm sure the biggest question that we have on our mind is, how does data protection and cybersecurity come in? When it comes to data protection and cybersecurity, when you're putting in place any system, for example, an implementation of a data loss prevention tool will mostly fall maybe under the data protection office, but high chances of it, most of the people who will implement are the information security analysts, or it will fall under the CISO office. So there's implementation or putting in place controls or systems that will ensure that you safeguard the CIA of that personal data that you have collected. You're going to put in place monitoring controls. For example, you may have a SIM, you may have an intrusion detection system that is able to detect people's traffic and all this. And all this is to majorly safeguard data that either you have at rest, or on transit. So as cybersecurity or infosec analysts or drivers, when you get into organizations, you're supposed to put in place controls that are going to safeguard CIA. And when we are guarding CIA, at the end of the day, the biggest asset to any institution currently is data. And at the core of this data, if you have personal data that belongs to your customers or your clients, then that means you're obligated to ensure you protect that data with regards to the DPA or the regulations around data protection. So as an analyst, even when you're doing a VAPT or you're doing let's say drills, or you're developing policies around incident management, or you let's say or even you have an incident and you have a ransomware like attack. A ransomware attack will lead to breach of your data. And if you had not put in place measures to safeguard against the ransomware attack, that means you have exposed your data, and you'll have to report to your regulator and also the ODPC if the data that has been breached actually contains personal data. So cybersecurity will come in to ensure that we safeguard this data that we have protected. As long as there is personal data within your database or personal data that is on transit within your environment, then cybersecurity plays a key role in ensuring that you safeguard CIA. We have implementation of controls. For example, we have the NIST framework, we have the COBIT, we have the ISO 27001, and many other frameworks. And especially if you go through the ISO 27001 framework, it has a lot of controls around data protection. For example, data masking, we have data loss prevention. It will ask you issues around data governance and all this access control. If you limit who has access to what, then you have also ensure that you're able to protect that data. If you encrypt your data at rest and on transit, it means if someone, even if it's a man in the middle attack and they're not able to access that data because it's encrypted on transit, or even if they get encrypted data and are not able to decrypt it, you see, you have ensured protection. You have adhered to both the data protection and at the end of the day, you've also ensured you have put in place cybersecurity controls. Another aspect that will come in with cybersecurity and data protection is a framework around a privacy by design and privacy by default. Okay, so a privacy by design will feed. It's now where you deploy the appropriate technical and organizational measures that are designed to implement data protection principles. For example, implementing a data loss prevention tool. Okay, implementing data masking. That is a technical measure that is designed to ensure that you have implemented the data protection designs, and where you ensure that you integrate your data security safeguards into your processing activity. For example, if you have I don't want to use a banking example. If you have if you let's say you work in an HR or a recruitment firm that brings tries to recruit staff, or tries to recruit on behalf of companies, and you ensure that either you have a portal, and on your portal, when you're doing like the first phase, the first applications, you just receive, you just even provide just a form where people are able to maybe fill in what is their qualifications. For example, you're looking for people with a bachelor's degree and all this. You just get data like in terms of just your academic for me to be able to see whether you qualify. And if you qualify, maybe on that form, the only information or access of data that I have is your contact email. So I'm able to just reach you an email for me to be able to schedule an interview. And after the interview is when I'm going to ask for your details, like your phone number, your references, then I can be able to reach out to them. So if you implement that and integrate those and ensure maybe that particular platform is encrypted, there's a firewall, there's an EDR on it, then you have implemented privacy by design. But privacy by default is more on just ensuring the business does not provide are just the first procedures. You could tick box, for example, I'm sorry for using that word, just making sure that you are registered as a data controller and a data processor. Okay, then you just limit the processing activity for any additional data unless the individual provides the consent. You see, like, you try and make it for design, you embed it in your systems, in your processes, and for default, you just ensure that your strategies and your procedures are aligned to implementing data privacy. I think you can read more on this. It's a very interesting topic. Then how do you ensure that, how do you implement a data protection framework within an organization? You create awareness, then you do what we call a data compliance assessment. Then you develop relevant policies because you must have governance around it. Then you implement data protection controls. Then you ensure the customer consent processes are in place. Then you ensure you have procedures for data breach identification and notification. Remember, you're supposed to notify the DPC within 48 hours of an incident and 72 to the customers. And then conduct data impact assessments, and then have a DPO in place, appoint a data protection officer in place. It's not mandatory, but it is a good have for organizations, especially that handle a lot of personal data. What careers can you consider now that you have knowledge around data protection? You can consider to be a data protection officer. You can provide consultancy services. For example, there are people who do trainings, there are people who help organizations do the data impact assessments and data mapping, especially the data mapping, because I know for data mapping, you not only define what data, how you collect it, how you store it, you also need to come up with diagrams that define how the flow of data is within your organization. And especially for someone who really understands a database, data at rest, data on transit, this can be a really good point. And then as a cybersecurity analyst, you can be able to pick gaps within the flow of data. For example, if your data at rest on a database or a shared folder is accessible to everyone, then you can put in place controls to ensure that you have, let's say, role-based access control or privilege access management systems. Then you can become a risk practitioner like Gloria, and because the data protection also requires institutions to do risk assessments, including third-party risk assessment and risk assessments that are aligned to data protection. Then you can become a compliance officer. Compliance, you check what are the compliance levels of this particular institution with regards to data protection. Then you can become an information security analyst. You're able to identify gaps or control, and you're able to advise on what solutions or what tools you can put in place. You can do research and education. You can research into topics. You can research into what is happening within the threat vector. You can research and do even blogs around AI and data protection. You can see people are using, let's say, deep fakes, and that's a matter of it's intertwined. AI, innovation, and data privacy, because this is somebody's image that is being used to create a deep fake. So I did not intentionally leave this conclusion blank, but I have a quote, and let me just get a quote. It's a very interesting quote that someone somewhere said it out, and I thought I can just make me look good. So it's no thumbs up to me, it's a thumbs up to them. And I think before I get the quote, I'll go back to our objectives and answer the questions, and then I'll conclude that quote and have any other questions. So the first question was how to protect an organization's data. The first step to protecting an organization's data is, first of all, understand the data. Okay. You need to understand what you collect, as in what data is there on within the organization. How is it stored? Is it stored as physical, or is it stored as electronic? Understand the data. Once you understand the data, understand the sensitivity of the data. Okay. Once you understand the sensitivity of the data, then you'll know how to handle that data. And in this case, I am not going to answer specifically only for data privacy. I'm also going to just also go to data that is not related to data protection. For example, access to logs of systems, forensic, maybe forensic investigation reports, business executive reports, or business executive minutes, or meetings, and all this. First, you need to understand the data within the organization, including financial, like go all the way, financial, HR records, and all this. Once you understand the data within your organization, then depending on the sensitivity, then that level defines how you're supposed to protect that data. Okay. If you have sensitive records that are accessible, put in place access controls. For example, if you have there could be organizations that still keep safes. There could be organizations that maybe such data or restricted data is only available as a physical copy and not electronically kept. There could be a specific USB cable that or an external drive that only carries, let's say, top secret data. So after understanding the data, the sensitivity of it, then you're able to put in place the controls. If it's a database, you can always encrypt or even mask data. You put in place access control. Who has access to this particular data? If you privileged users have maybe access to sensitive data, to ensure that you protect it from malicious actors, you can have in place a privileged access management systems, or even put in place controls like multi-factor authentication and all this. Another way to also protect data is to have in place monitoring tools. Putting in place a DLP will ensure that it guards the data from being maybe erroneously or maliciously being sent out. So if, for example, you have a DLP and you have a policy in place that restricts anything that is classified as confidential from being printed or being sent out to a domain outside of your organization, then that way you're able to monitor, put in place a restriction, and you have in place tools that are able to monitor and give you alerts on what is happening. And then you need to put in place security controls, for example, having an antivirus or an EDR, okay, to just guard from malware. You can have control on use of personal devices within your environment, use of USB cables or external drives that can be used to extract or take out data from your organization. I hope that answers or gives at least an overview of that. Risks or challenges of career paths. How risks and challenges of career paths. I usually say it's a very difficult objective, but I don't think there are risks. There could be challenges of choosing a particular career, but then I will just pose back the challenge or or just a thought to everyone. First of all, choose a career that you're passionate about. Okay. Something that if someone wakes me up at night and asks me, Gloria, where's the risk register? Or what do I need to put into a risk register? I'm able to dive into it. Number two, challenge you. Also, still challenge yourself to um if you know you're capable of doing something, challenge yourself, skill up yourself. If you skill up yourself and you know your stuff, I don't think you'll be having challenges on the career path that you have chosen. So if you choose something that you're passionate about, if you purposefully skill yourself and grow in that, put in the work, the dedication, the time, okay? And then choose a career path that you have to also think and ask yourself, why choose something that could be relevant in the next 2 or 3 years? Choose something that has relevancy. And even if it loses relevancy or in the middle of the way, find yourself to maneuver into something that is relevant. Okay. If you look at my career path, it's a very interesting path for me, like how I have grown over the years. But I came to realize one thing: choose relevancy. What is selling in the market right now? If AI practitioners are going to be the big thing in the next 2 years, why not start learning AI right now? Okay. Why not become an expert in it so that you don't lose relevancy in your own career? You can still become a risk practitioner, but then if you're going not to leverage and remain relevant, then that is a challenge you chose for yourself. So remain relevant, learn, keep skilling, learn something new every day. And even if someone just asks you and you're sure you're not an expert in it, but you have a little bit of knowledge in it and you're able to just say it out, that counts. Okay. Um, the life cycle of data management. Data management life cycle. This very, very, this, I think someone in database management would be best placed to answer this, but I'll try and answer. Or I can still, I think I'll reiterate it back to the person who asked so that I can get a clear understanding of what they wanted to understand, and then I'll be able to answer. So allow me to answer that later. Role, remuneration, and JD. So my role is an ICT risk officer. I manage, I do risk management from an IT perspective. Remuneration, that one is personal data. Not bad, yeah, even for entry jobs. That's what I can say. Because I know, let's say, internships mostly will, or let me just give a range. I think entry level job people you begin with, it depends with your experience, with the place. So it depends with the market. That one I cannot answer for unless you just reach out to me personally. My JD, I do reports for the board. I do reports for management around ICT. I support with disaster recovery activities. I support with the CISO's office activities. I support with BCP or BCM activities relating to IT. I do training and information awareness for all staff. Um, I do risk management. That is like the big chunk of it. So I identify risks, maintain a register. I do implementation of the information security management system in line with the ISO 27001 standard. I ensure we have controls in place. Yeah, information security controls, and having a program for ensuring user access reviews. So that's basically my JD. I also support with providing assurance. Now, from let's say we have monitoring tools within our environment. So I monitor like events and give assurance to management that the security posture here is good. And then I support with the VAPTs. Then finding a balance between meeting business needs, innovation, ensuring infosec regulation. Infosec on any organization will come with like a setback. Why are you making our work difficult? You are able to access all these things on the internet. Now you have put in place a firewall that will not allow me to access these sites and all this. Regulation, CBK, ODPC, and now we have a new regulation for cyber, that is the CMSCA, and all this. But at the core of it, we want innovation and we want business to thrive. For me, I always will answer this, and I've learned to answer this in the best way possible. And the best way is, and I want to believe it's the best way is let the business, let the ICT that is doing innovation, let the InfoSec team that is implementing control, all of them, let them like buy into the same agenda, which is the bigger picture. So the bigger picture will always be driven by the strategy of the business. So what is the strategic goal of the business? So if you want to achieve, if you go to management with, let's say, you want to implement a solution, and then you mirror that to, like you buy into the business strategy. Like we're going to implement this solution, it will help us to improve our revenue by this much. Let all of you on the same table buy to the bigger picture, which is the business strategy. So let you be driven by that, so that you embed your controls to protect the business need, to still, you can still have innovation, can still meet your business objectives, but then have the controls in place as a way to boost that up. So they must all buy into the business, the bigger strategy of the business, and then always walk with them the journey. If you train people and continuously sensitize them on areas, and they're able to see those exposures, then they are also able to embrace what you're trying to drive. So I think I'll pose that question to the one who asked around the life cycle of data management to just repeat, and then I give my quote.
I
Well,
see his hand is up. Daniel,
Mm.
you can go ahead.
yeah. So sorry. Yeah, thank you. I think I realized I didn't realize that you're not more on the that side, but you're on risk side. So maybe I
Mm.
could just repackage it and then just say maybe you could
Mm-hmm.
share with us what your more like what your day to day, like your life cycle or your processes look like, because maybe that's where we could get the most benefit. But then I just wanted to point
Mm.
out there's something you mentioned about uh, cloud adoption. I mean,
Mm.
how you need of consent, and could you just touch on that a bit more, because I think that's also something I'd be very interested in learning more about.
Okay, like cloud adoption and gaining consent.
Yeah, for example, you mentioned if I'm putting my data outside the country, I'll need to have there's a process for
Oh,
consent.
what
So
you need to, yeah.
yeah,
So it's
so
not the
just
process of
unpack that
consent.
process. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Okay. S- So what
No, I
happens?
meant the need for consent, but just if you could help us understand the process of it, that how it's actually done in a business.
Oh, oh, okay, okay. So you'll just, what needs to be done if you're storing any personal data outside of Kenya, you need consent from the data subject. Okay. So the ODPC has actually outlined what you need. Let me try and get the ODPC, or even the Data Protection Act, as put in place what you need to define, or what you need to put in place, or how you need, like, you need to justify of why you're storing the data outside of Kenya. You need to uh, give seek consent of the data subject, You also need to get approval for it. You need to um, you need to justify what controls you have in place. So you just allow me to get those, like the prescription of what you need for you to store data outside of Kenya, and then I can share that with Hope. I hope that's okay, because it has given,
Thank you.
it has clearly prescribed what you need to do if you're storing data outside of Kenya. But you need to seek consent of the data subject, and you need to get approval. So I just need to give you the prescription. If you'll allow me, that's okay.
No, perfect. Thank you. I think that helps me so
Oh,
much.
okay. Okay.
So, Gloria, before you go to your quote, you could kindly answer the two questions, and their hands
Okay.
have been up for some time now.
Okay, no
So,
problem. Sure.
yeah, tell Collins, you can go ahead, and then Samuel as our last question.
Okay.
Thank you so much. My question is in regards to the recent Google fiasco. I'm sure Gloria had the story when Google accidentally deleted a $125 billion pension scheme funds online account. So I'm just curious to know from your side, what could possibly have caused that, and what are the measures or rather guidelines that can be taken to avoid such events in the future. And then the second one is in regards to the data protection laws. You've said there's something to do with right to be forgotten. So if I want to an organization to get rid of my data, how do I go about that? Do I issue an enforcement notice, or do I serve them with a cease and desist? Thank you so much.
Okay. So I'll start with the easy one, actually the right to be forgotten. So organizations have in place ways or procedures. For example, if you registered, maybe it's, let's say I'll use the example of a bank. So if you walk into a bank and you open an account and you filled in a form, okay, so that is how they collected your data. So the organization should have a process also in place for you to give consent and say, I want you guys to delete my data. So the same way that they have a process in place for you to for them to collect your data, they should have a process in place for you to request for you guys to delete. So if you, or even if your means of communication is through email, okay, you can send the email and say, I wish for you guys to delete my data. So they should have processes in place for that. So that is to the organization. But what you need to prove as a data subject is that you actually requested them to delete your data. Okay.
Okay.
On the first question, I will not really delve so much into the case, but what I can say is having in place monitoring tools, okay, that you're able to know who deleted, for example, a particular data, and having in place backups. For me, backups can work. For example, if you have your data backed up to a certain date and someone still deleted that data from, let's say, your DB, you're able to retrieve the backup and get access to that. And having in place monitoring tools, for example, a data activity, a DAM, a database activity monitoring tool, will be able to alert you if someone deletes particular data or they are not authorized to. So having in place tools or monitoring solutions, and also having in place backups, you're able to still retrieve that data. That's what I can answer to that. I don't want to delve into into Google and I'll be quoted.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your insight.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we take Samuel as our last question, kindly, because of time.
So
Samuel,
good
go ahead.
evening, everyone.
Good
My
evening, Samuel.
question will
my question will be maybe what are the professional certificates that you've taken so far, and you may also name a few others that we can take relating to data protection and infosec.
And infosec. Okay.
Yes.
So I'll not necessarily say what I have done. Um there's okay, I know Cybershuja are doing a data protection training. There's one, but there's ISO 27001 has a certificate for PIMS. It's called private. Let me just. It's PIMS. It's ISO. Let me check. Just give me a minute. There's ISO. So if you know ISO, then you're able to. Let me check the name of the ISO standards. ISO private. So there's ISO 27701. So that one is a certificate on data privacy. For InfoSec, there's also ISO 27001. There's the ISC squared certificates. There's so many. You can still do CISSPs. You can still do the CISA certificates from ISACA. You can do CSIM, ISACA. You can. There are so many certificates for InfoSec. Yes, that's why you can say it depends now on your, like, do you want to specifically do data privacy? Do you want to do risk? So there are so many. Yeah, but those are just but a few. So you can do CISA. CISA is for audit. You can do CSIM. CSIM is for security, enforced security management. You can do the ISO certificates. So ISO, there's ISO 27001 specifically for that one is more aligned to ISMS. There's like for ISO 27001, there's lead manager, there's lead for 27001, there's for lead implementer, lead auditor, and then for ISO 27002, there's lead manager. Then for the ISO 27701, that one is for governance, that's for data privacy. Then you can check ISC squared. They usually have certificates also for InfoSec. Yeah, those are just a few, but the ones which I can get out of the top of my head. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Then
I think I can
to
also
add on.
include.
Yeah, go ahead, Gloria.
I can also, I think I can just put a slide there for certificates that people can consider. Yeah.
Okay. So what was I going to say? I was going to say that sometimes when you're starting off, the certifications are so many, you may not know where to start. So what I'd advise is look for, those job postings, they have job descriptions. Look for maybe if you're looking for entry levels that you want to get into, check the job descriptions. They act as a guide or narrow down things to a perspective. So you can just see the kind of certifications they are looking for or they've listed under the job description. Then that can help guide you towards a particular goal before you settle in.
Yeah, that one is very, very true. And also something else, because I know also certifications can really be costly. Consider also because I know, like, for example, Strathmore They usually do give out the free certificate, and I did it for data protection, and we finished the training. Try and leverage on the free training courses. They can also be like an eye opener for you to consider maybe a choice on how you want, on what your career path will be, because you can go ahead and do a certificate or a certification, and then you realize, this was not even my really, like, I really didn't want to go this path. So sometimes try out the free ones. They'll give you more insight, and also you'll be able to easily get your line, and then you're able to now align with that. Yeah.
Exactly. So also what the last speaker said, sometimes you use so much money to get a certification, then it expires even before you make use of it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Back to you, Gloria.
Oh, so I was to give my quote. So it's so there are two people in society. There's the optimists and the pessimists. Okay, so it says both optimists and pessimists contribute to the society. The optimist invents the aeroplane, but the pessimist invented the parachute. So sijui nitaweka hapo. See, it's very deep, eh? Both of them do contribute to society. So the optimist invents the aeroplane, while the pessimist invented the parachute. So sometimes you might be the optimistic one who does the big thing, but hujafikiria what is the risk, what if this plane goes down, what could happen. So the pessimist, came in and invented the parachute. So that is it from my end. Thank you, guys. Back to you, Hope.
Okay. So thank you so much, Gloria. I still see there are two more hands, but actually three now. So what we'll do is, Gloria, with your permission, can I share your either LinkedIn handle or email address? Which one are you more comfortable with?
For the questions,
Yeah,
I think since
questions
they're
or
just
people who want to reach out.
okay. For reaching out, LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
They can just you introduce Msemeni mmetoka pale Cyber Shujaa. It will give you a heads up. Give me more attention. Yeah.
Okay. So this is questions, comments, or maybe you're interested in the line of work Gloria is in, or even after the session, just go, I wouldn't say bother her, but just get to know maybe what transferable skills she got from Cyber Shujaa that even helped her in where she's working or even land a job or something. So feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. Then now that we've come to the end of the session, thank you so much, Gloria, for your time. Thank you for going through the data protection. Thank you for even widening our idea on the difference between privacy and protection, going into the Kenya Data Protection Act, giving us a view of risk. I like how you went into the framework such as ISO, and I hope that intrigues our thought to go and even check for other frameworks. Go search PCI DSS, go check your ITGC controls, just go check on frameworks out there and how they affect this area of data protection. Then also, thank you for taking up the questions and engaging us in the discussion as much as possible. To everyone else, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time. I hope you learned something, and always feel free to send a comment maybe to your group if there is an area you'd like us to delve in more. If there's something in data protection you'd also want us to cover more, so feel free to reach out. So, Gloria, thank you so much again, and have a good night, everyone.